Quick question for you before we begin today's podcast. Have you ever overreacted or something was building so much that then you ended up snapping, erupting, threatening consequences with your kids, and then later wondered, why did I react like that? Most parents in those moments think they go from 0 to 10. They think they go from calm to losing it. But here's what I've learned as a psychotherapist and a mother of four. You're probably not starting from zero. If you grew up in a home where you had to scan the room, scan people's mood, watch out for somebody's tone, the turn of a head, the closing of a door, your baseline becomes hypervigilance. So you're not actually starting from zero. And that conditioning, that training of your nervous system doesn't just switch off when you grow up. Your nervous system is still running on that old programming and it's showing up now with your own kids. I built a quiz. It's called Are You Really Going From 0 to 10? And it will show you something that most people never actually check: your actual starting point, your actual number, your actual baseline. This isn't about finding out something that's wrong with you. It's about finally seeing what you're carrying before your day begins. It's linked in the show notes, so you'll find it on my website, katiemckenna.ie. I would love to hear your feedback because most people are really surprised by the answer. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode on Beyond Survival. Today, I'm joined with Dr. Ruth Callahan, who is a chartered behavioural psychologist and clinical supervisor with over 20 years' experience, 11 years with the Irish Youth Justice Service, and over 10 years in private practice. Ruth, at this stage, you think I'd be able to say that off the top of my head, but I don't. I'm still reading it. How's it going?
Not a bother. It's a bit of a tongue twister, Katie. Fair play to you.
Yeah, it is. I think we'll just jump straight in, Ruth.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Okay. Hi, Katie and Ruth. I have been a long-time listener and I also love Katie's book, You're Not the Problem. I recommended it to my clients constantly. I'm a psychotherapist and have been struggling with my own narcissistic family system. My stepfather has been in my life since I was 4. My biological father died when I was a baby, so he is the only father I have ever known. As far back as I can remember, he emotionally abused me, but I did not label it as such until fairly recently. I was frequently lectured for hours, told I was selfish, mocked and yelled at. He occasionally abused me physically. He usually did this when we were alone. I told my mum a few times, but then I would get in trouble for causing a fight between them, so I stopped telling her. He would sometimes smash phones and throw chairs. You never knew what would push him over the edge. I grew up terrified of him. I always thought my mum was the softer, kind parent. She would tell me to just ignore it or apologise. This treatment continued into adulthood. There would be phone calls that often made me feel guilty and like I was a bad person if I didn't do what they wanted me to do. My mother could never be disappointed. I married my husband 18 years ago and we have one son. My husband is from a normal, loving family. For years, he tolerated my stepfather's abuse as well. On many occasions, my stepfather would fly into rages and scream at my husband over trivial matters, such as sitting on his desk or chair or standing too close to him. My husband is traumatized by my family, and he has told me that they have ruined all holidays for him. I tried to always keep the peace and never let my husband say anything to my stepfather because I knew the backlash would be horrible. My stepfather would also frequently phone me and say horrible things about my husband, and I would just freeze and never tell anyone. I stopped speaking to my stepfather 2 years ago after one of his rages at my husband. What I did not expect was my mother's behaviour. When I was honest about how he had treated me as a child and adult, she told me that it happened a long time ago and I needed to get over it. She added that he has done so much for me and I wouldn't be where I am now if not for him. I felt completely invalidated and heartbroken. She would phone me crying and screaming, saying that I was tearing the family apart and that my husband was keeping me away from them. I eventually started talking to him again because my mother was making me feel so guilty. The most recent event happened this Easter. My stepfather thinks it's funny to joke about me having a secret boyfriend. He told this joke on Easter in front of family. Neither my husband nor I heard it. My stepfather emailed us to thank us for hosting dinner and mentioned the joke again in the email. My husband was furious and replied accordingly. Since then, my stepfather has not spoken to any of us, including my 19-year-old son. I had been working with my therapist on going no contact with him, so this is a blessing to me. However, my mother, as expected, is being horrible. She did not speak to me for weeks after my husband replied to my stepdad's email. 1 week before Mother's Day, she called to tell me she was furious at my husband, claiming he is too sensitive and that he worries so much about me cheating, he should go to therapy. I am shaking with anger as I write this. She told me that my stepfather mortgaged the house to send me to university 40 years ago and that he has done so much for me. She stressed how upsetting this is to her, noting that at 83, she is at the end of her life and will need help. I agreed to meet her and my son for lunch at a restaurant the day before Mother's Day. She gave me a card signed only by her, not my stepfather, and informed me that she and my stepfather were hosting my younger sister and her children for a steak barbecue that night. A few days later, I saw on Facebook that my sister had posted pictures of that dinner, the cards and the gifts, and that my stepfather, her biological father, had signed her card. I am so angry and disappointed with my mother. She did not protect me as a child and still betrays me. I cannot imagine a world which I would allow my husband to have a tantrum and not sign a card for my child, or abuse them and then invalidate my child. I feel like I have tried to be the perfect daughter for 50 years, and now I am done. I am struggling with my mother and defining what I want our relationship to be. I love her, but I am so hurt that I am not sure if I can ever get past it. I feel so alone and utterly heartbroken, but I know she will never take accountabilities for her action or behaviour. I hope this letter helps someone else feel less alone. Thank you for all the work you do. Anonymous. Then we just sent a follow-up email to this listener saying we were considering to use her letter and if she had a question for us, and this is how she responded. Hi, Katie and Ruth. That is so exciting. Thank you. My question is, how do I navigate a relationship with my mother? And if I choose not to, how do I manage the guilt? Here is an update. It might make the letter too long, but if you can use it if you like, or if you have time. I have had 2 conversations with my mother since this letter. We went out for lunch once, and she asked me when I was going to talk to my stepfather. I told her that I wasn't and started crying. I told her again about the abuse. There was one incident in which he beat my 2-year-old sister and I when my mom was at work. I think I was 10. She said she didn't remember and that I must not have told her. She said she gets a different story from my stepdad and wonders how she didn't know all of this was going on, noting that he doesn't remember either. She said, well, then that means I'm a terrible mother. When I told her I never felt protected, she insisted that I was protected and that she was always there for me. The second conversation was similar. After each talk, I have had panic attacks for several days and can hardly go to work. My husband had a harsh talk with her last weekend and told her she needed to leave me alone. It also hurts to be excluded from family events, even though I do not want to go. Most recently, my parents called my son to invite him to a barbecue at their house for his birthday. The invitation included my sister and her family, but obviously excluded my husband and me. I am so angry, but I would never tell my son not to go. My son feels awkward, but he still wants to see them for his birthday. The whole situation feels so terrible. Anonymous.
And the whole situation is so terrible.
Yeah.
You know,
It
for what
is.
it's worth to this listener, I am furious
Mm.
reading this letter. So I can just imagine. She talks about panic. I feel that too. I can feel the flutter in my chest, but tremendous amount of fuckery going on here. Excuse the language, Katie, but my goodness, the gaslighting is through the roof. I don't remember that, and neither does your stepfather. I mean, where does that leave you? It's so invalidating of her experience. I don't buy that she doesn't remember being told, that mom doesn't remember being told about this. It just doesn't add up. You know, the mathing, it doesn't make sense. And I have a question, Katie, because there's a phenomenon here that I personally haven't seen before, which is saying something at this stage, the amount of clients I've met in the therapy room. But whilst I've seen, it's not uncommon at all. It's frequent that the son-in-law or daughter-in-law gets targeted, right, as the problem, becomes the scapegoat quite a bit. But it's rare, in my opinion, that the mask gets slipped enough that the son-in-law, the outsider, actually gets abused to this level by the narcissistic family system. I'm curious, have you seen this before? Because there's always an undertone, there's a blaming, but it's never, or at least I haven't experienced it directly played out or targeted towards the person so overtly, right? Because there's usually a hiding behind the mask of, we're so perfect, we're so fantastic, you're the problem, but we won't actually say that out loud because there's a real cowardice often comes up in these situations. The outsider never actually sees the mask slip. They only see the narcissistic family system as fantastic and fabulous and charming and all of these, the personas that come out. But, this listener talks about very real live targeting of her husband by her stepfather. And I personally haven't seen it get played out this overtly before. There's always some sort of tension held or some sort of negative feeling towards the outsider, the usurper, the scapegoat, but rare, in my opinion, to see it get played out this overtly.
Mhm. I I agree with you, and I see what you're saying because there is always that mask. And what I would say, or what I typically see, it depends how involved the partner is then in holding the boundary and confronting them.
Right.
Whereas towards the end, and this is, I mean, if I go back to the letter, did this listener say like 18 years she's
18 years.
married? So
Hmm.
he's in this family system a long time. And so we see that part that he, by proxy, goes along with it because she is telling him not to rock the boat and he doesn't want to cause her any more angst. And there is this part where partners want to be respectful and not give out about, you can give out about your parents or your siblings, but I can't. But this is very different when it's abuse. So this is
Yeah.
very different in normal, when I say normal, good enough family systems. And there is that protective part that if somebody's allowed to give out about their sister or their husband or but somebody else isn't. But this
Sure.
is not the same when somebody is being abused. We do not work by that sort of social etiquette because this is abuse. And what I see when a partner, in this case the husband, has watched from the sidelines for so long and sees it and sees the hurt. And when he eventually steps in, or
Yeah.
she, if this was a wife that stepped in, that's when they're targeted. And there's such an easy scapegoat then in that. So I see
Yeah.
because he said no, like even there with the mother last week, leave her alone. And before that, when he emailed back the stepfather. So he's protecting her, but that puts him right in the firing line. And then the rage and the anger because they don't have their claws in on her anymore. They don't have that
Yeah.
overt control. They're losing it. And when a narcissist is losing control, they are more dangerous. Whereas
Yeah.
I think when somebody is still under that like fear, obligation, and guilt, the narcissist still has the power over the child. And there's less of a need to attack somebody else because the manipulation is working. But here, this listener has took back so much power
Hmm.
and freed herself from that, but
Hmm.
is still left with the devastating ramifications. And I suppose what I see in this then when she's talking about that panic, and you're right, like that, even let's name the emotion. I was going to say fear,
Right.
but it's terror. And when I look at this in terms of the nervous system, as a child, that terror is paralyzing, and that terror puts you into a survival response. If
Yeah.
that's fear, fight, flight, or fawn. Typically, for the child, it's fawn to the narcissistic parent. Go towards to bridge that gap to try to create. And when I say safety, it's to reduce the harm and the attack.
Yeah.
But now, because this listener is free from that, has her own safety, has done so much work herself as a psychotherapist herself, what I wonder what's happening, and this is what I would see, is that now she's actually having the space, the safety, that terror is actually coming up that was suppressed all those years because it wasn't safe to feel
Oh,
it.
wow.
That child terrified, and she's getting a glimpse of actually how terrifying it is, and then why we go to fawn in the first place.
Yeah.
That panic, that fear, that shaking. And it is fear inducing because obviously the threat of discard is here. And then you're rightly calling it the fuckery because the confusion. On the one hand, I don't remember, right? And I agree with you. I don't think she doesn't remember. But on the one hand, I don't remember and he doesn't remember. But also on the other hand, oh, well, then that makes me a terrible mother. But then on the other hand, if he did it, get over it. And
Yeah.
then on the other hand, like it's your responsibility and will you reach back out? But also it never happened. Like
What?
Yeah.
Pick a narrative and go with it, but this is
Yeah.
the mental gymnastics that we see getting played out so
And the
frequently
mental
in these.
gymnastics is the gaslighting. I've said this numerous times.
Yeah.
I love that word is so known now to people, but I think that sometimes it can dilute the impact of what gaslighting is because it is this. It is destabilizing. I am
Yeah.
so confused and I don't know what's happening. But again, I think this listener is actually getting access to feel those emotions that weren't safe to feel. And it is terror. That's the panic.
And you see, I hadn't conceptualized it in quite the same way. So what I'm hearing from what you're saying there, Katie, is that this is progress for this listener in her healing. that she's reached a point where she can feel
I
the
would say
terror.
so. And a bit like last week when I was talking about, the what I call the healing stage of cocooning. And you were like, oh, yeah, well, that sounds lovely, doesn't it? But actually, it's
Yeah,
devastating and it's so
yeah,
hard and it's painful. And I was like, yes, thank you for saying that because
yeah.
this is not a nice period. When we're talking about progress in terms of healing, yes, but does it
Hmm.
feel like that? Absolutely not.
No.
For people, it can feel like they're going backwards. For people, it can feel like they're even having a mental breakdown. For people,
Hmm.
they can feel helpless, confused. It is painful and it is painfully terrifying because that not having control over my body and this panic and then look at the confusion. But wait a minute, I'm here. I don't want to go to the party. I don't want to be there. The confusion is here. And yet I'm having these such a visceral response. And it is a visceral response. It is a nervous system response. When we think of PTSD, this is what we're talking about. If somebody comes back from war and they hear the car backfiring and they're panicking and hear somebody that isn't aware of PTSD and what happens, they can say, "Oh, you're safe. That's why are you reacting like that?" But it is PTSD that I am back in that moment, reliving the experience. But it isn't like a movie that I'm rewatching. And I think that's what people think of a flashback as, that I'm reliving this experience. For some people, it can be a very visual memory, but for most, it is this felt sense. And so what CPTSD, complex PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, this is so many events that you have lived in. This felt sense is your lived experience that our brain protects us from because we go into fight or flight because we have to survive it. But those
Yes.
emotions are kept. Our brain, the trauma memories are fragmented, that feeling, and it was never safe to feel that because you have to
Yeah.
survive it. And
Yeah.
so, yes, absolutely. And maybe let me go harder on that yes, is this progress, but progress doesn't feel appropriate because
I
it's
get that.
so fucking hard. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yeah.
that word, it's accurate, but it doesn't
Yeah.
feel like progress because it's
Yeah.
so hard. This is a window into the terror that the younger child, the inner child, experienced, lived.
Yeah. My heart goes out to this listener because I can really appreciate why she is in this tailspin at the minute. And can we just name like how atrocious it is to leave her 19-year-old? This is how atrocious on behalf of the grandparents to leave her 19-year-old in this bind as well. I want to see my grandparents, but my parents aren't even invited. So like that's a horrible position for him to be left in. And I'm livid on this listener's behalf that her son has to be subjected to this fuckery, as well. And it's so unfair and it's really, really nasty.
It is nasty. It's nasty. It's cruel. And wasn't it earlier? The stepfather had also discarded him. He was ignored,
Absolutely.
but now he's being used as a weapon
Yeah.
to what I see as triangulation. Oh, you're
Yes.
invited and you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is cruel. And again, where's the humanity? Where's the humanness here? Because that's what you're talking about. Having empathy for that
Hmm.
young man, young
Hmm.
adult, and the lack of empathy from the narcissist. That
Yeah.
this is tactics, that this is a pawn. It's shocking, I think, for me on a human level. Like when I think of me as a I was going to say as a mother, it's not. It's just as a human. Like there, what you're
Hmm.
talking about, for somebody to not have that empathy. And actually, what the mother has in spades is weaponized empathy to constantly
Yes.
make the daughter feel guilty for
Yeah.
her. Yeah, and
Yeah.
use that against her, that she's feeling that she's a bad daughter, that she's done something wrong. And you've talked about this before, Ruth, about,
Hmm.
and maybe I'll put it back to you to say a bit more about the difference between guilt and then if it's manipulation. Because when you grow up in this, it's not that you believe that it's wrong to want autonomy or to say no or to reject any form of harm. You're
Yeah.
told explicitly and implicitly that you are wrong, that you're making it up, that this wasn't that bad and you've upset me and I can't cope or your mother can't cope. This part here, it's never okay for my mother to be disappointed.
Yes,
What the absolute fuck for an adult that it's not okay for
absolutely.
her to be disappointed? Disappointment is just a fact of life. It's an emotion that we have
Mhm.
to tolerate. But what happens when a narcissist is disappointed and doesn't get her own way, we see the narcissistic rage
Yeah.
and we see then the manipulation at play. But can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's so hard when you're in the midst of that, because you feel like you're
Yes,
doing something wrong, that you are causing this harm.
absolutely. And I think you hit the nail on the head there in terms of naming the weaponized guilt, because even this listener mentions, how do I manage the guilt if I don't continue this relationship
Yeah.
with my mother? And that is so live. And I'm sure it's so live for so many of your listeners, because it comes up so much, especially when we've lived a childhood with this within this system. We're conditioned to feel guilt all the time. But here's the thing, and this is what I urge my own clients to bring it back to boil it down, because sometimes, as you say, when you're in it, there's so much going on, there's so many dynamics, it's so difficult to kind of, narrow the vision down and see the woods from the trees, so to speak. And there's something live in that, in terms of, okay, if I can accept that guilt is designed to prompt us either to apologize for or make amends for some misdemeanor, some wrongdoing I've committed, um, say, or to hit you a box now, Katie. I'd like to think I'd be apologizing fairly swift and trying to put it right or make it right in some kind of way. But, say I stand up and stumble and collide with you accidentally, I still feel some kind of way about that, and I'll want to apologize and make amends for it. But what if I don't hit you at all? What if I don't injure you in any way, and I still feel like I need to be apologizing or making amends for something?
Mm.
That's what I urge my clients to consider. Has this listener actually done anything wrong by standing up for herself and taking a step away from a really abusive, toxic situation and relationship? I would say no. She's done everything right. So what this is then toxic guilt that shows up. And as you rightly named, it's the manipulation. It's a byproduct of or an intended product of the manipulation that's supposed to, I guess, motivate you to put things right according to my playbook and meet my needs and basically set yourself on fire so I can warm my hands,
Mhm.
is essentially what's getting played out here. So let's not do that. I've got a big old bucket of water here for this listener, right? I want to put out the fire and let her start to heal,
Mhm.
because there's something about, we got to pour a lot of salve on those burns now, because she's been on fire for her whole life at this stage. So let's put a load of salve on those burns. Start that she's gonna it's gonna feel worse before it feels better at this, and that's, as you say, the cocoon stage is going to feel a lot worse before it gets better, because when you put that salve on, it stings, right? But it's also healing. So there's nearly something comforting. I want this listener to almost feel comforted in her pain at the moment, or by her pain at the moment, because that's the job of healing. So there's something about, like, let's get the salve on. Let's, you know, let go or set down a big chunk of this guilt and name it and recognize it for what it is, which is the product of manipulation, the product of 40, 50 years of conditioning.
Yeah.
And enough already. Now we're not having this anymore. This is too much.
When you're talking there, I agree 100%. And the guilt being the manipulation, and it's not yours, and put it down,
Hmm.
and the pain of that. And then there's also an element when I'm listening to you. Let's say if you actually didn't
Sure.
bump into me,
Yeah.
and the word that was coming to my mind was trust. You have to trust yourself that
Yeah.
that didn't happen, that you
Yeah.
didn't do that. Or if
Ah,
I had hit you or bumped into you and I'm saying, oh, I didn't mean it and it wasn't that big a deal and get over it, or oh, that makes me a terrible friend, or all of this, right?
mhm.
This is the gaslighting to confuse you that
Yeah.
if I didn't do it, but if I did do it, I didn't mean it. And if I didn't mean it, you're overreacting and you're too sensitive and that's on you. And if you're still
Yeah.
doing this, like, you're at fault. And
Yeah.
that's the part that is,
Excellent point,
yeah,
because that's undermined in someone,
no,
because you've been gaslit for so long. How do you start to trust your your experience that I didn't injure another
And I would
part.
add to that, it's not only undermined, I think it's something that never gets to develop. Because how can you
Yeah.
trust your reality
Yeah.
when from childhood it's being denied? And also, then not only neglect, which is huge, but active abuse on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Mocking,
Oh my
sarcasm,
goodness.
humiliation, physical abuse. Like, talk about
And the
terror.
lectures,
And the
hours
lecture.
long
Yeah,
lectures, like that's a
Jesus.
form of people that's used as a torture
Yeah.
device, a psychological torture. That's literally what's gone on is psychological torture to bombard and berate and berate and berate
I
for
want to say
hours
that
on
that's
end.
literally psychological torture that's
Yes.
used to brainwash and indoctrinate people.
And break people
And
down.
break people down. So when we're talking about this childhood piece,
Yeah.
and this fear, then that embodied felt sense comes too, along with that confusion. How could the child? And I would imagine that this is a very, very young piece. I wonder
Yeah.
when this listener is saying, and if I just go back to the letter here, after each talk, I have panic attacks for several days and can hardly go to work. Right? So this is
Mhm.
debilitating.
Yes.
Debilitating. Can't go to work. What I'm imagining, and I could be wrong, shaking, feeling sick, maybe even whether it's actually vomiting or whether it's that gagging, like that
Mm.
feeling sick and terror, and that I'm scared. I'm
Yeah.
terrified, and I
Yeah.
wonder what age does that part feel? Because again, I imagine that it's very young, and this is the splitting. Because this is so confusing. I don't get to develop a sense of self. I don't get to have my own autonomy, my own wants,
Mhm.
thoughts, feelings, any of it. I have to live in an altered reality. Like you're living in the narcissist reality because they're for hours lectures, like they're indoctrinating me into this. And even for somebody that hasn't had hours of lectures, you're
Yeah.
still having to live in their reality because the parent is projecting onto you who you are. It's an altered reality. And so even there, like I want to shake my head going like, what the fuck? Like this is so confusing. How can I trust myself? And then how can I trust myself? Especially when you have witnessed the other person be so delusional.
Yeah.
And then it's the fear going, am I like that? Am I the one saying, no, I never did that? Because hear this, no, I never did that. No, that didn't happen. No, she's wrong. No, I'm actually the victim. Fuck, I sound like them. Like,
Yeah.
that's when the rational brain tries to
Yeah.
solve it. So this trust, this, when that cocoon, this is trust that has to be built at a different level. And it sounds in so many ways this listener has done it to get to this stage, to one, all the work she's done, being a therapist herself, all the therapy that she's had, in her relationship, even going no contact, that this is a blessing that the stepfather has stopped contacting,
Yeah.
like she was ready
Yeah.
for this. But it's this part, the mother's gaslighting and twisting and manipulation. And it sounds this is the part that she's getting sucked in. It sounds like she trusts what the stepfather has done. She trusts it. She sees it. There's pain. It would have absolutely been a grief and feeling that relief. Oh my God, he's stopped it. But here, the mother, do you still, because there's
Mhm.
still a hope to, how can I have this relationship? But if I do, how do I work
Yeah.
with the guilt? And it's destabilizing because it's so confusing, because even here she's still not, and I'm going to use the word allowed. She's still not allowed her own reality. She's been denied her
Yeah.
own reality.
Yeah. And I think that that's absolutely getting played out in her relationship with mom, because she expresses at one point that she was taken by surprise that mom reacted so aggressively and so negatively when she set a boundary. And so I wondered what version of mom had been presented to her prior to this. Like it sounds as though, for want of a better word, she saw mom as the safer parent,
Mm-hmm.
even though like she does acknowledge, you failed to protect me, you betrayed me, you continue to betray me, and still
Look at the
she was the
trust.
safer parent.
Look
Oh
at the
yeah.
reality. Look at the trust in that. I want to highlight it, because when I'm talking about
Yeah.
this younger part
Yeah.
doesn't have it, that inner child. But this adult part of her, holy shit. Holy shit, because that's
Holy shit.
exactly what it is. Those words, that language.
But do you see how there's two versions of mom coming up?
Mm.
Like this very aggressive, quick to discard, happy enough to triangulate grandson, endorses and supports. And can I just name this? Because, oh my God, I really had a very, very strong reaction to this part of the letter. This bullshit
Mm.
about, oh, for God's sake, it was years ago, get over yourself. Like this narrative that somehow you're holding on to some grudge for this tiny little thing that may or may not have happened at some point in the past. No, no, no. This is ongoing systemic abuse. It continues. 2 years ago, I think she mentioned, was one of the most recent. So why would she have any faith that the behavior is going to stop and or change? No, this isn't some distant singular event that happened once off 100 years ago, and for crying out loud, you're really, holding on to clutching straws here. What's wrong with you? That's not. Please don't allow yourself to get sucked into that narrative when it's very patently obvious that this is an ongoing pattern of abuse, and it's not going to change because there's no evidence that it's going to change, especially on the part of dad, but also with mom, because mom seems hell bent on enabling dad and supporting his behavior and excusing his behavior and minimizing his behavior and gaslighting on behalf of dad. So there's something about, like, do we have any realistic expectations that mom's behavior is going to change into the future?
That's a really good question, and I wonder for that's a really good one for the listener to answer, because there's something in that about seeing the reality of the mother as a whole, that this is
Yeah.
her. As you were talking, I was like, she's a wolf in sheep's clothing. Yeah, she's a wolf in sheep's clothing, and here the listener is seeing the wolf, but the wolf
Yeah.
was always present, which is why she fawned, because we
Yeah.
don't fawn if there's safety, because we don't need to. And when
Yeah.
we do talk about something harmed, the parent protects. So we don't have to shut down, minimize, dismiss any of that. It's seen, it's acknowledged, there's space, and then there's protection. But this, a lot of this, what I see with the enabling parent, is that this is done so, when you have somebody so overt, right? So overt that the stepfather is so overt that then this part, that if she goes silently cold or, is just a bit upset or stops talking to you, by
Yeah.
the way, that's all fucking manipulation and it's coercive control, but it doesn't look as bad as what he's doing. And so here I will be soft and nice, and I will be the sheep when you go and apologise and you didn't mean it, it's not that bad and you never told me. But actually, if it happened, I'm the worst person in the world. And if it did happen, get over it. And if it, like, it's so confusing. Like, it's just, it's
Yeah.
word salad what the mother's going, but always blaming the daughter. But that's why it was never safe, because the wolf is present. The softness, or the sheep, is there when you're doing exactly what I want. And when you feel sorry for me, and when you're being kind to me and adoring to me and still looking to me for something. Whereas now this listener is absolutely being in her adulthood and being rational. I want to say this, and I want you to hear that. You are being rational. You are making sense. You are not crazy in any way, and don't let them in any way keep fueling that narrative that there's something wrong with you. You are making perfect sense. You are easy to follow. We by the way, we never edit the letters at all, in case people think that we do. We didn't edit one word of what you wrote. You make sense. You are rational.
Yes.
And this is gaslighting. This is gaslighting, and this is so damaging. And so then this part with the question, how do I navigate a relationship with my mother? Ruth, I think that's such a valid question that you put to this listener, going, what part of you hopes that maybe that there's room for change, or what part of you hopes that you're just going to keep meeting the sheep and that the wolf will never show up? Because these are not two people. Often people talk about Jekyll and Hyde, let's say with an abusive partner, Jekyll or Hyde, he can come home in good form, or he can come home like he's like another person. I don't recognize him. This is the same person. And this is the thing with the enabling parent that I think that can be so shocking, because I really want them to go back to the soft, loving, caring, that there's space. And actually, when we sit with that, when there's this level of gaslighting, I always wonder then, how much space is there for you in this relationship even after this? How much interest is there in you? What questions are being asked to you? And are they in a genuine way to hear you? Or is this about her? Do you know what I mean? So let's
Yeah.
say that if this
Yeah.
is, I'm asking you how you got on at something last weekend, but really it's because I need fuel, maybe because, oh, geez, I'm so worried about you and I need to, right, it's all about me in this way. Or is it currency that I want to find out, where did you go because I want that currency, or
Yeah.
I want to talk about, the 18 or 19-year-old grandson. Is the information for currency? Or is this mother genuinely interested to hear her daughter's experience and hear how she is? And it's not that I don't think that there was never maybe some elements of that, but overall, I wonder if it was there at all. And I don't think it was, because when somebody is capable of gaslighting somebody to this extent, that is present. That is not something that that's not something that somebody just like
Yeah.
adopts temporarily. This is what
Yeah.
somebody does when you're no longer fulfilling the role you used to.
Yeah. There's something really live in that. And even when you mentioned currency, it put me in mind of this debt, right? It appears this listener holds or carries, right? This lark of, he remortgaged the house to put you through college, so
Oh my
therefore
God.
you owe this unpayable uh, debt to him in some kind of way. Can I just say to anybody out there who either is or is considering becoming a parent, if you're of a mind to open a ledger for your
Yeah.
child,
It's
just
a really good
don't,
visual.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is it about checks and balances here? Are we becoming accountants? Are we running a tab on the expenses of our children here that someday has to be repaid or paid back? And even at one point, this listener talks about moms saying, I'm 83 and I'm going to need care sometime, or I'm going to need, I can't remember the exact phrase,
Yeah.
but there was this implication that you better be available
Mm.
when I need you to care for me, because you owe me. You owe me this
Mm.
debt, and you owe your stepfather this debt. And just the way you talked about currency there, it put me in mind of this money element that seems to be an undercurrent, that you owe us this. You don't have the luxury of stepping away and protecting yourself.
You're absolutely right. I mean, I think that we did, money came up as well, like just recently there in episode 7. And it's that part that a narcissist will weaponize anything. And here money's been weaponized, either that we had spent on you previous, or that we could take away now, or money is used as a form of shutting you up. I'll buy you something, or I'll pay off a debt, or I'll do something.
Or I'll reward your sister with a steak dinner.
Mm,
Do you know, that's literally what's getting played out here is, we use, I noticed the inclusion of steak dinner for some, or barbecue for some reason. And my felt sense was that that was on purpose, had been told to this listener to highlight this value in your sister. So we're going to invest in steak for sister and discard you. So money is even transactional in that regard, in terms of, we'll pat you on the head with a steak barbecue whilst we discard your sister.
That's,
That's
when we're
horrible.
talking about living in reality, this is the part with the narcissist, isn't it? That everything is transactional.
Everything,
Everything is
everything.
transactional. And that anything will be used as a weapon, that whether I paid for you for college, or I had such a difficult labor, or I
Yeah,
put my life on hold for you, or all of this, it's used as a
yeah,
weapon to silence you, to shut you up, to deny your reality, to
yeah.
keep you in servitude to me.
Control you.
Control and dominance, that you will be grateful, and then that you will feel guilty for ever having held me accountable and saying that, because how could you?
Yeah,
And this is where the fear, obligation, and guilt is born. And then
yeah,
when you grow up in this, these wounds are tapped. It's so evident here with the husband, and I wonder if that part where she could see it so clearly being played out, and then her healthy anger or what was done to him. Because you mentioned fuckery, the fuckery of this, right? This constant joke that she has another boyfriend. How fucking damaging and wrong is that?
that
That
is
this is,
so bad.
and that this joke is being done out, not even in our presence. I mean, it's bad if this is
Yeah,
being done, but this, I would say that this is a smear campaign. This is
yeah,
where, like, there's these, um, grains of sand or little seeds that are being planted. Because, oh, sure, if you have a boyfriend not trustworthy, not loyal, deceitful, like there's all of this that is ongoing. And then for your husband to be like, yeah, and because it was mentioned even in an email, like even writing it down, and for him to say, no, that's not funny. And for his mother-in-law, this listener's mother, to turn around and say that there's something wrong with him. And if he's that worried, let me find it here. She called to tell me she was furious at my husband, claiming he is too sensitive and that if he worries so much about me cheating, he should go to therapy. Now,
So who's the sensitive one here, right?
yes, when somebody's able to trust their experience going, oh my God, yeah, look at her reaction and how sensitive she is. But when you've grown up with this and then that fear that I can't take a joke, maybe there's something wrong with me, maybe I'm too sensitive, and questioning somebody's mental health and their mental stability, that now he is insecure and jealous and is worried about her cheating and he should go to therapy. Like, complete fuckery, such a turnaround, such a turning of tables. You know, when I think of DARVO, yeah, I did think reverse Uno, you know, everybody like reverse Uno. This is completely on you. And it's bewildering. Whereas she could trust her own experience to see what she saw. And that's the part. This is the part that has such hope. The part that then sits with this younger, confused part, scared, terrified. Of course you are. Of course you are. And it's this part. I wonder for this listener, what's it like to meet the terrified younger self? And I think the fear is that, oh no, this is actually me now, all of me. This, I would say that this is parts work. And you are meeting your younger self. And yes, when it's showing up, it is like taking over you. But it's this part, this awareness that you have, this trust you have, this cognitive ability and knowledge. And it's like, oh, I'm meeting this part of me for the first time, because there's actually safety now for this part to show me how terrified it is. How terrified. And I wonder what it wants you to know and what it's like for you now to feel it and embody it and have an experience, because the child has to dissociate from this and disconnect again in fight or flight. I'm not asking you to be grateful in any way for your trauma. That's wrong. But this part, there's so much safety in you now that this part gets to feel it.
Yeah. And I'd love to know what that part of her needs right now, and finding a way to give it, you know, because that's maybe the reparenting piece, I guess.
Yeah.
For this inner child, this wounded piece.
Yeah, that's really, really important, isn't it? Because I think what you're talking about there, Ruth, is that curiosity.
Yeah.
Curiosity on that part. And I have some questions here that may be helpful for this listener. I know she's a therapist herself, but we can't therapize ourselves. And this is where supports are necessary. But it is that curious to, what do you notice about this part? How does it show up, right? The thoughts, emotions, and sensations. And how do you feel towards this part?
That's a key piece.
What is your response now? Yeah. How do you feel towards it? Again, getting curious about this part. What would it like you to know, this terrified young part? And I wonder, what is this part's role? And also, for how long has it done this? And what is this part afraid of? What would happen if it didn't do its job? So this terrified part, I wonder what the terrified part wants to do. What's the inclination? And as I'm doing that, I wonder, does it want to go forward? The part that I'm scared, I want to reach out or phone or make amends. And if it doesn't want to go forward, I wonder, is it frozen? I wonder, is it paralyzed in freeze? And I wonder for this younger part, how scary is the thoughts of walking away? Because it wasn't possible for the younger part to walk away. This is terrifying. So look at this actually playing out in real life. I'm walking away and I'm considering walking. I've walked away from my stepfather, and actually he discarded you. You didn't even walk away. He discarded you. But I'm really considering how I'm going to navigate this. And if I can't and I have to walk away from my mother, this terrified younger part coming up, because it's not safe to walk away. And it's panicking. No, It's not safe to, like, can you see how visceral that piece is?
Yeah. Especially considering a child is so dependent on their caregivers for everything.
Yeah.
So they're trapped. This part might feel trapped
Yeah.
and may not realize that there is an alternative.
I wonder, does this part know that this listener exists?
Yeah.
That she's an adult and is a psychotherapist
Yeah.
and is not there anymore, that it is over? I wonder,
Yeah.
does this part know that she has an 18-year-old son? I wonder, does
Mhm.
this part know how competent and capable they are and how they help so many other people gain a sense of self and trust themselves and are there witness to that? I wonder, does this part know that this part exists at all? And I would imagine it doesn't, because that's what happens with fragmented trauma memories.
Mhm.
And so even that part shifts something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Really does. Yeah.
I noticed that there's no easy answer in this one. There is no quick fix in this one. This, a lot of times when people are emailing and they're questioning whether it was abuse or not, this listener
Yeah.
has done so much work in recognizing the abuse and being able to name it and call it, which it is, absolute abuse. And the mother is abusing you too. The mother is abusive. Your mother is abusive. Look at even how I was saying the mother, your mother
Yeah.
is abusive. This is abuse. This is harmful. And this part that's showing up, this fear, terrified. Ruth is right naming it, that reparenting piece, that trauma piece. Sometimes when we acknowledge that, like in therapy, that can shift in some sessions. Sometimes this can take a lot longer, depending on the work that this listener has done and how much safety the listener feels in their body. Richard Swartz, who was the founder of IFS, he has a lot of videos online showing how this process can happen. I imagine that this listener, as a therapist, is aware of this. There's actually a wonderful book I read, Ruth, and it was called If You Knew Me, You Would Love Me. She's an Irish psychologist, AJ Cosgrave. If You Knew Me, You Would Love Me. And she, in the book, talks about her own experience and her own diagnosis of having DID, which was
Right.
Originally, it used to be multiple personality disorder, and now it's dissociative identity disorder. And this, and Richard Swartz talks about this in terms of parts. This is where we all have parts. And, when people recognize that if we want to do something or something's new, there's a part of me that wants to do it, but there's a part that's really scared, and there's a part, right, and there can be this like battle. And so we all have these parts. But in trauma, there's some parts that become completely isolated, that we can't, that are exiled. So let's say, imagine pride for a child growing up in a narcissistic family. That's not safe to feel this emotion. Anger is not safe to feel this emotion. So these parts become silenced, shut down, disconnected from. In the case of extreme abuse in this book by AJ Cosgrove, this is where then those parts become so separate, they form their own identities. By the way, this listener, I just want to make it clear that there's no way that I'm suggesting in any way that she has this, because when somebody has DID, they lose hours of time that they don't know, and literally these other personalities take up and take over. But the reason that I love the book, one, some books, like let's say The Body Keeps the Score, can be very re-traumatizing for people because it's so graphic in the abuse that people have had, their clients. This book, she doesn't go into grave detail about her trauma, but says that obviously there's significant trauma there. But the work that she talks about doing in these parts, right, her personalities, is what reparenting looks like. And in all the books that I've read, it's from clinicians that try to explain this. And this is the only book that I've ever read. And maybe there's more. And if anybody has read one, like, email into us and let us know what it is. But this really, through the whole book, is taking you through when she first kind of learns about a personality or an identity that's showing up. Let's say for this listener, this part that's terrified. And she goes through the part of sitting and welcoming this part, saying, it's lovely to meet you. like this is safe. I am here. Like when you're ready to talk, like it's lovely to meet you. And what do you need? And she even talks about different parts like ice cream or a teddy bear or comfort or and being gentle with that. Or if she's very busy in a day, going, okay, I need to be the adult here. I hear that you're
Hmm.
there. I'm going to come back and tend to you later. Where is that? I often talk about this in inner child work. Where is that safety, that hub that you can go to? What do you need? But it's a book that gives just wonderful language on, I think,
Yeah.
on what reparenting is. And I think a lot of people who do this work, who are interested in IEFS, who are interested in parts work, this shows up like an EMDR. It gives a language and somebody's real lived experience taking you through that. And I think it's wonderful.
Hmm.
And I want to say that there's work in this.
Yeah.
There's work in this. And so this can't be like wrapped up in a wonderful bow here. There's work in this and there's pain in this because you're getting to
Yeah.
meet the parts that were terrified and in such pain.
Yeah.
But you have created such safety for this younger part to one, even see that it's there,
Hmm.
for this younger part to fully believe and know that this is no longer happening, that they'll no longer be harmed.
Absolutely.
And this is the part where people say, like, I know this, but I don't feel it. And so this is about that embodied sense that that this younger part can feel it and feel and know that it's over and that you're safe.
I love the idea that there's this sort of piece of us, an essence of us that gets to bear witness to all of these various parts of ourselves. In acceptance and commitment therapy, we call it self as context, in terms of there's this piece of me that gets to view and experience my thoughts and my emotions
Mm-hmm.
and my memories and my perception. And I think for this listener in particular, given that, as you say, I said under her sense of self and her trust in her own experience has been undermined. But you quite rightly said it never got to be established in the first place. So there's something very live and valuable maybe for this listener and other listeners out there who've experienced a phenomenon where their own lived experience has been undermined or not been allowed to develop, or that trust and faith in self hasn't been allowed to develop. There's something very valuable about rebuilding or building from scratch, maybe that trust in my own experience. And maybe that can start out by just allowing myself to bear witness to
Yeah.
my thoughts, my feelings, and recognizing that they're valid and real and legitimate.
Yeah. And this is the part, because this younger part,
Yeah.
you're right, doesn't have that ability to trust themselves because they're a child and they've been gaslit. But this
Mhm.
part can trust you, the listener. This
Yes.
part can trust you
Yes.
because you are
That's
grounded in
it.
reality. You are the adult. You have resources. You are capable. You are competent. You are not delusional. You are not crazy. You are so based in reality. You are so connected to even be able to connect to this piece. So it can trust you, even though that will take time, because this part will be terrified. Yeah, it takes time to build that trust. And if it's not ready to
Yes.
trust you yet, it's like, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm
Yes.
I'm here. We're not going to force this part in any way.
Baby steps, right? But
Yeah,
that's how you get to where you need to be.
yeah.
But I'm also want to take a moment to acknowledge the gorgeous support systems that this listener has around her. I mean, 18-year marriage, and he's been through it.
Mm.
By the sounds of things, at the hands of your family, unfortunately, but he's there and he's fighting for you and he's standing up for you and he's shutting shit down and he's holding boundaries and as you said there about that so-called joke, like in inverted commas here, vile, and a perfect example of a narcissistic bind, right? That either you laugh or you're sensitive, so you can't win
Mhm.
in a situation like that. And jokes are so often jokes. They're not funny, but they're so often haha, funny, horrible, cruel, nasty insults, LOL. And if you don't laugh along, there's something wrong with you.
Mhm.
So it's a horrible way of conducting oneself. And
Mhm.
can I just say, the nature of this particular joke is vile because nobody but this listener and her husband know the exact nature of their relationship.
Mm.
So to make a ha-ha in a way that could have jeopardized their relationship is horrendous. Like that's a very dangerous thing
Mhm.
to do or say when you don't know what's going on in somebody's intimate relationship. So horrendous. Anyway, I'm off on a tangent there. But what I was trying to say was there's something about the way this listener's husband went to bat for her.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
just love it. I love it. I think that
It's a corrective
if nothing
experience, isn't
else,
it? Yeah.
if nothing else, she could look to her ability to uh, forge and maintain such a supportive relationship with her husband, and I'm
Mm.
assuming with her son as well. If nothing else, can that serve to validate how sane and
Yeah.
rational and grounded and plugged in she is?
You always talk about as well as a behavioral psychologist, this
Yeah,
part of she is already defying your mother. Like you are already defying your mother. And this is the behavior as you as an adult. And
yeah,
all the behaviors that you have changed to protect yourself that are leaving space for this younger bit. But you are doing it. Like you are doing
yes,
it, this part, like the trust that you have in yourself, even
yeah,
from that letter, because that was a few weeks ago to now that there has only been 2 meetings. And when I say only, I'm not minimizing them, but that feeling that you're having after, like that's a valid response that gets to
yeah.
be felt. And I agree with Ruth that there's no winning, but there absolutely is freedom, and there absolutely is safety, and then there absolutely is that we can meet and reintegrate these parts into us. Because when I
Hmm.
think of the child, when the child feels safe, this is the part that we get to play, yeah, and have fun. And the parentified child really struggles to have fun unless it's like purposeful, yeah, even like a board game, like that there's a beginning and an end, but that sort of silly playfulness, because they've never got to do it because they're terrified living in survival mode. So when this younger part gets to feel that safety and terror,
Yeah.
um when it's just what space. And I don't think that this younger child will know how to play. I would be very surprised if they did. And that's not to say that they haven't ever played or haven't ever been creative or imaginative or any of those things. But I'm talking about the freedom, a child that is unburdened, that is like,
Mm.
"Woo!" Do you know what I mean? Like that freedom, because the child carries such a burden. And so this, when we're talking about curiosity or opportunity to meet this part, this is about you. This is about you.
Mhm.
And the fear is about you connecting to you. And I'm going to say, not about your mother. Yeah. And so let's, what's the word, Ruth? Let's like decenter her, like disempower
Yes.
her, like psychologically
Yes,
separate that.
absolutely. Because just as they have the power to discard, you can take that back into your personal power and choose to step away if you wish. I never tell anybody what to do, but
No.
there is something about where's your power in this?
Mm.
Where's your decision making? Where's your autonomy?
Yeah. The pain goes right alongside that.
Yeah.
Anger, fear, it's all valid. Your anger, I love to see it.
Yes.
I love,
Yes.
generally, actually, I'm only thinking of that and we are coming up to the end. Normally, I'm like, where is this person's anger? I love it.
Hmm.
I was angry with her.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. The child never got to feel that. You see, meeting these parts, you're doing
Yeah.
it. You're doing it.
Yes.
You are so capable. You are, yeah, to trust
Yeah.
this part. This is the work, and it's shit and it's hard. It's so fucking
It
hard.
is,
Yeah.
but there is such
Yeah.
peace at
There
the
is.
other end.
Yeah. And it deserves to be felt. That younger child deserves to be heard.
I just want to, drop a little droplet of hope into the mix that there
Mm,
is peace at the other side of this.
mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ruth. I think we've said all we can. Yeah.
Very best of luck to this listener.
Yeah.
I mean, I know she's in this line of work herself, and the amount of work she's done, it's just jumps off the page. And so just
Yeah.
keep going and
Yeah.
very best of luck with it.
And trust yourself in this.
Yeah.
I know I talked a lot about inner child work. There's parts that you're like, no, that mightn't fit. That's fine. Like, put that down. Like, take what worked, leave what didn't. Trust yourself. And if
Absolutely.
forever throughout this, you're like, no, that's not it. That doesn't fit or hit. Absolutely fine. Put that down. Yeah. Trust yourself
Hmm.
in this. And thanks very much for sending in your letter. And I think, Ruth, we're up to episode 9 in this series. Next week
My
will be our
goodness.
last in the series. I will be back in series 7 with some solo episodes and some interviews. And Ruth, delighted you're going to be back for season 8. Holy shit.
My
For season
goodness.
8. So for anybody, if you want to send in your letter, please do. We will be reading them beyond_survival@outlook.com. Like, subscribe, share, do all the things. I rarely mention I should. We are on YouTube if anybody wants to check it out there. And we will see you again next week.
Look forward to it. Bye.
Bye.